Welcome to Alcohol-Free Superpowers, the podcast for those questioning the role of alcohol in their lives and choosing clarity over conditioning. I'm your host, Jennifer Reed. We're talking truth, transformation, and what really takes to reclaim your power. Let's dive in.
Gary, if you want to dive in and talk about, when, where it all started and how you came to be what you're doing now.
Yeah, where it all started. First of all, great to be here. It's great to connect with you. It's the second time you and I are meeting, so it's we're tight, right? We're a close knit pair here. So and honestly, it's good to be here, and it's amazing what you do. So thank you for what you do for our community. I think these things are super important. And where did it start? I mean, I grew up on Long Island, Port Washington, Long Island, and I grew up, I think, in the greatest time you could possibly grow up in, which was the 80s. To date myself, I'm 51 now. I was born in 74. And, I grew up in the 80s. We rode bicycles, played a lot of sports, had the greatest group of buddies anyone could wish for. I'm still in a chat with them to this day, all of them. Grew up in a really awesome neighborhood. Huge park. Played, like I said, I played sports. And, I watched all these sort of like 80s clips or 80s movies, and that was us. We were on our bicycles. We were, getting in trouble, but kind of innocent trouble. I was always kind of in trouble with teachers, but, nothing like, we weren't bad kids. We were more, pain in the butt. I don't know if I can curse it and say pain in the ass, but, we were pains, but we were having fun and typical, out first thing in the morning and back when it got dark out. That's what we all had to do. Everyone knew each other. It was like a blue collar neighborhood. It was, like I said, I grew up across the street from this park. I was the first kid at the park every single day. And, we got up, I probably started drinking a little earlier than most, but kind of typical stuff, sneaking into, parents' liquor cabinets and, 5th grade, 6th grade. Then we get up a little older and into junior high school, and found pot in like 7th or 8th grade, and I got in a lot of trouble. In sobriety, I learned so much of why I drank, but I didn't realize it at the time. I started like most people, kind of progressing, maybe I said a little earlier, and definitely some rougher guys older than us around, always looking out after us. But, I started drinking high school, and then I got into a lot of trouble, though, really, really early on. Kind of a big event in my life. I was 16 years old. It was the night before Thanksgiving, a huge night in my town. The whole town was out, and I was out with my older cousins, and they're like, they kept talking about the bar, Finn McCool's tonight. And I was like, I gotta get there. I gotta get to this place. And I was 16. I snuck in the bar, knew everyone in the place. I was having the time of my life, and a fight broke out. I don't know, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning with my cousins, spilled out into the street, and I woke up Thanksgiving morning with a first-degree assault of a police officer. Cops came, and I say apparently because I really don't remember much of it, but I was in big trouble. I was facing some felonies, and kind of totally altered the trajectory of my life, if you will, because some of those older guys I was mentioning, they looked at me differently. I was like, oh, he's all right. Yeah, come here. I was getting rides with them. I was kind of like, it was, I don't want to say cool, but I was accepted, and like, it sounds silly to say that, but that's just really kind of how it was, and I loved to drink as I progressed. I was a pedal to the metal. I was Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, could be the nicest guy in the place, and drop of a dime would be the nastiest. 16 was the first time I got in trouble, but I got in a lot of trouble after that, as years gone by. I got DWIs, I got a couple more assaults that I'm not, proud of. And so I found, everyone was doing adult things. They were going to college. They were graduating college. They were starting families, and I, barely graduated high school. I did graduate. I went into I enrolled, I should say, in a couple of community colleges. I did play a year of junior college baseball, which was a great year. But typical Gary, I didn't go to school. I just played baseball. It was a great year because of that, right? I think it'd be fun for anybody. But, I was, no college degree, no going nowhere. I I loved to party. I had an abnormal obsession with drinking, with partying. I just loved it. I was, in my head, I was the best at it. People wanted to be around me because I was so fun. I was so crazy. Anything was going to happen. And it was something I did good at, which is so crazy too. Like, I can do this better than you can. And I think there's a lot of truth to that ridiculous statement, right?
Yeah.
But so I did. I sort of moved on to, what a blossoming alcoholic was going to be, which is I started bartending. And I told you I grew up in Long Island. I would spend my summers out in Montauk, which is a great, awesome, surfing beach town, party town. I'd spend all my summers there. I'd bartend there in the summers, and I was one summer I had a day job bartending. It was probably the best gig anyone could probably ever have. I wake up at whatever 10 o'clock, smoke some couple of bong hits, go to work. 11 o'clock, tell myself I'm not going to drink during the day, and 2, 3 o'clock I'm starting to drink it behind the bar, and get off at midnight and go out all night. Like, that was what I did. But I was going nowhere fast.
Okay.
And I had met, I guess fast forward a little bit, I met an amazing girl, and her brother worked on Wall Street. And they're like, you know what, you don't need to, you should just try to take these tests and see if you can, take the tests and maybe you can come to work here. And so I did that. Actually, another guy got me into the test. I took the test. I had these brokerage licenses, and this girl, her brother worked at a real firm and got me in the door in a real firm downtown New York City at one of the big bulge brackets, Solomon Smith Barney. And it was February of 2001. How old was I then? I was like 26 years old, and here I am. I got my first real job. Like, I'm not bartending anymore. I have the weekends off. I have, health care. I have, adult stuff, right? That, I have, maybe I could start a retirement, even though I didn't do any of that because I needed every penny of every paycheck. But this is my first real job, and something I can maybe do something with this. And so I start there in February. We know what happens there in September 2000 when I'm outside smoking a butt when the planes hit. And after September 11th, I really, I think, went dark. I was kind of like this fun, wild, crazy man, and I went really dark. I probably was dark before that, but I didn't care anymore. And I went AWOL from that job. And so, another quick story. I'm out Thursday with a bunch of guys. Now I'm in a support role, and all these other guys. I feel less than, by the way. This is stuff I learned in sobriety. Everyone's smarter than me. Everyone's better than me. Everyone definitely has more money than me. I'm just this nobody, and I'm just trying to, with a chip on my shoulder, and trying to, screw these guys. Like, why can't I do well here too? But I just, again, these are things I learned in sobriety, and I went out with them on a Thursday night. I didn't show up on a Friday. Went out all weekend on a bender. Didn't show up Monday. Didn't show up Tuesday. I basically get served papers in a way. I get FedExed. I had to sign for it and said, Gary, if you're alive, you need to contact us. Otherwise, your job is terminated. You're gone. So that was, when was that? That was 2002. And, I called them, and I thought really quickly on my feet. And I said, I'm alive. I'm here. I said, and I have a problem drinking, and I need to go get help. And so, to me, it was kind of just buying some time. Again, I didn't realize it at the time, but I felt like, I guess you can't fire me. At least let me get another 30 days out of this, perhaps. And I went upstate to a place, an amazing place in New York. It's called Miracle on the Mountain, St. Christopher's. And I can remember this as clear as day. I'm sitting in a room. I get up there. My girlfriend, that same girlfriend, drives me up there. My mom drives me up there. And it comes to me. I'm in a meeting, and I have to say, I'm Gary, and I'm an alcoholic. Let me tell you, I thought my world was over. I was like, look what you did to yourself now. Look at where you are. And, I guess for all intents and purposes, it was over. And, not to go on a long drunk-a-log, I didn't even last 30 days after I left that rehab. I was right back out. And they say, a belly full of booze and a mind full of AA or a mind full of sobriety is a tough place to be. And for 4 years, I was just in and out of AA. AA is where I got sober, and AA saved my life. It's funny because I was never going back to those people. I knew at some point I'd probably have to stop drinking, but I was definitely not going back there. And I remember it was May 12th, 2006. I think I'm 31 at the time. I'm 30, and I'm sitting in my apartment on West 12th Street, in the West Village, a great spot. And, you know, looking back, I was given the gift of surrenders. I just didn't want to do it anymore. My mom's one of 10, and so I'm the first grandchild on her side. I have like 20 something younger cousins, and they all kind of looked up to me. I don't know, I played sports and kind of all looked up to our uncles too, but I was the first grandchild, I was the first cousin, if you will, and he works in New York City. Just
Yeah.
these are my boys. I love them all. And I remember just thinking, like, is this what you want them to see? Like, this is okay. I started doing. I was getting drunk at everywhere. You know, I was a raging alcoholic. I was pedal to the metal at all time. I couldn't stop. Once I started, I just couldn't stop, and I just didn't want to do it anymore. And the next day, May 13th, I called New York City Intergroup, and I went to a meeting, and I haven't had a drink since. I did everything differently that time, though. I didn't check the box by going to a meeting. I went and sat in the front row. I was done. I mean, I was so scared also, Jen, that I was going to go back out because that's what I always did. And, like I said, I thought my life was over, but little did I know it was really just beginning.
Right. So was that your why, that, having these other cousins look up to you? You wanted to be a good example?
No, my why was because, I didn't think I was going to be long here. Like I wasn't. I don't know how to sound. I don't want this to come off the wrong way. I just couldn't do it anymore. I didn't want to live that way anymore. That was my why, and it was so bad that I thought my entire life as I knew it, my job, this career chance that I have. I've been here for a few years. I held on to that job somehow, by the way, and I thought that was gone. I thought all my relationships, all my friends, I thought everything was going to be gone, and I was just going to have to completely start over. And I was okay with that. I was like, that's what I got to do, because this life that I'm leading is just not working. And I was just, I was walking down the street, but in my mind, I was really just crawled up in a wall in the corner. I was just so done. And so that was my why. My why was, I can't live like this anymore. Again, the repercussions were everything that I knew, everything that I was. My complete identity was a drinker, partier. Everyone who ever crossed paths with me knew it, and but my why was I can't live this way anymore.
How was that with your friends and your, I guess, drinking buddies?
Well, I guess to speak to, how bad I was, they were, I was the last person to realize I had a problem. And then when I did know I had a problem, I alienated them too many times. Like when I went to rehab, they were all behind me. They were cheering me on, and when I went back out, some guys were pissed, like, you're putting us in a bad spot here. And, I got to a point where I was like, listen, you're either on this team or you're off the team. And I really don't care where you are. Like I was in the process of burning bridges, and some were like, well, I love you anyway, so of course I'm going to stick with you, whatever. And, but, everyone, like I said, I'm still friends with every single one of them. There's a few of us that are sober now out of that group. I'm one of my best friends. He had moved out west, and I heard, give him a call. He's been going to AA, so I started talking to him. And then as the years gone, we've got another guy join the group, if you will. So, I think that's important too for our audiences. Everything I thought I knew, everything I thought was going to happen, like, was completely wrong. I thought this career, a big part of it is going out and entertaining. Like that part, I would have been the best in this whole firmament. Like, like nobody had been better than me. I might have gotten arrested that night, but, we'll forget about that little part. But, and lo and behold, 6 months or even a little less of true sobriety, I get promoted. I get moved up into a role of production where now I'm able to kind of start carving out a little career for myself. And, knock on wood, I'm still doing this same thing. Finance, as my quote unquote day job. Yes, I just started a side hustle, a brand. We can talk about that in a little bit, but yeah, everything I thought that I knew was completely wrong.
Yeah. So what's that saying? No one's life ever got worse after they quit drinking. Is that kind of what you're?
That's for sure. Yeah, I don't know anyone whose life got worse after they
Yeah.
got sober. I think that's probably an impossibility. Life happens. Don't get me wrong with that statement, but
Right.
we've all been. I've been through stuff, sober, and you learn how to deal with things as a sober man. And I've been through a lot of adversities for sure in sobriety,
Yeah.
and I don't have to drink over them.
Can you touch a little bit on, and because you have your own podcast, and I don't know if you look at your guests, but for me, when I have male guests on, they tend to do way better. Like I get way more downloads, and I kind of wonder if it is because guys don't really usually talk about it, or there's such a macho stigma around it. Have you felt that or seen that with?
I haven't say I've seen that.
Okay.
I do know a lot of guys, friends that I guess are sort of quiet podcasts. Even, some friends of mine listen to my podcast that I didn't really,
Yeah.
I didn't know they were, but they're like, "Hey, I love what you're doing." I'm like, "You listening to it?" They're like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I think it's awesome." I'm like, "Oh, all right."
Yeah.
I wouldn't say done better.
Okay.
No, I mean, I think it's probably I think it's back and forth. I think,
Do you? Okay.
yeah, I don't know how, I think the stories, just the stories do what they do, and the internet does what it does. The algorithms do what
That's
they
true.
do, stuff
Yeah.
like that. But
Yeah.
just keep at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I haven't found that like men or women do better, get better, more downloads.
Huh. Well, and maybe it's because most of mine are women, and so then a male pops up, and they're like, "Oh, let's listen." I don't know.
Oh
Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah.
that's
Check
kind of
this
a
one out. Yeah.
tangent, but
Sure, sure.
so just out of curiosity, when you were talking about, you're 16, you're getting arrested, you're in the bar. Where were your parents, or how was the upbringing? I mean, I know it's
That's a
80s child.
great.
I totally get that. They're like, "Yeah, we'll see you
No,
when you
that's
see
it.
us."
That's a great question, and I'm kind of laughing, but because I've had that question asked. No, listen, I had loving parents. They were together. They're still together. I love them dearly. I saw a lot of stuff as a young kid, 8, 9, 10, that young kids aren't supposed to be seeing.
Sure.
There was more on my, not more, like on my dad's side, that is. I've never seen my mom really even have a drink. Definitely haven't seen her intoxicated or anything like that. But my dad was a different story, and he liked some dry goods, and I would find it all over the house. And there was always his, rough and tumble dudes knocking on the door, and all sorts of times, day or night, and so I mentioned like the chip on my shoulder, like that started to get my guard up. I had a little sister, my younger sister too, was in the house, and like, it's a great question actually, because it really opens up stuff. I was a skinny little, 10-year-old, and I remember thinking, being upset with myself that like I didn't stand up for myself, or I didn't, a guy yelled at me once in the house, and I was so upset with myself that I didn't like stand up to him, and so like I wanted to fight these guys at like a young age, and I remember even super young age thinking like, whatever I see is fine, but my sister sees any of this stuff, this,
Oh, sure.
this 70-pound 10-year-old's gonna wreak havoc on this house, and everybody get out of the way. But that's really what was going through my mind, and like thinking about how would I do it, and whatever, getting crazy stuff. But I mentioned that is because it started developing this chip on my shoulder, and then the 80s, you started, the Say No to Drugs thing was out, and again, this feeling of less than, of anxiety, of people knowing what was going on inside the house sometimes. And when that came out, I finally kind of, asked my house about, hey, we're talking about, say no to drugs and all this stuff. And I guess I had the chance to have that real conversation with someone, with my dad specifically. And, there was no truth. It was like, oh, no, what are you talking about? Everything, you didn't see anything. And so from that point, I was like, okay, like I'm kind of on my own. Like, I don't know if there, again, these are things I learned after, trusting people, fine, and maybe that was the event, but, I was like, okay. And I developed this just chip on my shoulder. And it's probably it's still there. He'll come out sometimes. He's just a little quieter, but it was really all feelings of fear, of anxiety, of less than, of people knowing what was happening, all things you build up. There was also a time when I was really young, I was terrified that he wasn't going to make it home. I used to sit in my we had a 2-family house. There was someone lived upstairs. I would just sit at my front window and just terrified he wasn't going to make it home because of the people that were in it. And I knew what was going on. I knew this, I say this all the time, like young kids, they know exactly what's going on. I don't think they don't know, because you're talking to someone that I knew everything what was going on, and where it was, and what it was. So that I laugh too. I'm blessed with two young children now, and we have these conversations. Oh, I'm like, oh, believe me, they know everything. They know everything. Who we think they hear everything, and so. But yeah, so yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's a great question.
Yeah. Oh, I'm yeah. As a mom, that was where it went. It's like, huh. I mean, but kids can do all kinds of stuff, And you're like,
oh yeah, sure, no question.
Wild child.
Yeah.
You want to touch on what you're doing now outside of finance?
Yeah. So it's funny. I thought, like I said, my world was over, and it was just beginning. And I went to, everyone knows my story as far as where I got sober is AA, and I'm still very active in AA. I love AA. Some of my best friends are in there. But I guess, what was it, 3 years ago or so, I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I've always wanted to be my own. I always want to build my own company. And I was involved in a bunch of groups, and I'm always trying to learn. I'm constantly trying to learn stuff and what my next chapter is. And someone brought up, I think I was on a podcast, and someone said, you should do your own podcast. Like, you got a great voice, whatever, your story's awesome, you're authentic, whatever I was like, well, what do I do a podcast on? I was like, if you look at my back wall, like sports, there's probably like a million sports podcasts, right? Like, how would I do that? And, just find something you're kind of passionate about. And, that same girlfriend I mentioned earlier, she bought me a book because I was struggling. And it was called Courage to Change. And in the book, there's excerpts of like celebrities, and like Pete Townsend's in there, and I think a couple of actors, maybe some like titans of business in there. And they're telling their stories of sobriety, and really opened my eyes. Like, wow, those guys, Pete Townsend, like that rock and roll, rocker, he's sober. Wow, maybe there is, maybe it opened my eyes like so big. And then, being blessed in New York City, that first year, all I did was go to work and go to meetings. That's all I did. And the people I would see sometimes, especially on Friday, Saturday nights in downtown, it was incredible. And they're just normal people like you and I that have the same obsession to drink or do drugs that you and I have, and they're sober now. And I'd see these people, and it helped. And so I guess this seed of podcast was planted in my mind, and it just dawned on me, like, wow, I think there could be, more people could benefit to hear some of these just absolutely incredible, beautiful comeback stories, than this, church basement, and so I was like, I always had these crazy ideas of businesses, and I kind of wrote out this sort of mission statement for the podcast, and I showed it to my wife. By the way, so that girlfriend is my wife today. She's
cool. I
love
that.
Yeah. So, and I wrote out this mission statement. Kind of just came out of me. I don't even know how, because I'm not a good writer at all. And I was like, oh my God, what is she going to do when she sees this? She's going to think I really lost it. And I showed it to her, and I really think I'm going to start a podcast. It's going to be sobriety based. And I wrote it out, and she's like, drop everything else, go all in. This is like so you, because I was always kind of open, but it actually helped me. It was easier for me to come out with people, if or if I'm in a place where there's a lot of drinking, and like, why aren't you drinking? I'd be like, oh, I can drink, but just get me in a couple of attorneys because I'm going to get arrested. It's going to be an ugly night. And so I kind of just went that way, in a way, and because it was true, but it made it easier for me, and then I wasn't even on social media, Jennifer, at all. Like I didn't have anything. And I found this incredible community and these terms like recover out loud. And I thought it was incredible. Now you see so many of us, we see these podcasts, you see celebrities sharing their story all the time. Charlie Sheen just had that documentary, his book. I'm like, this is recovering out loud. Like this is, share your story so others don't have to suffer in silence. You mentioned the word stigma, right? Like, I don't want to lessen the stigma. I want to eliminate the stigma.
Right. Yeah.
So I started this podcast and it went great. It was going great, and it still is. And I've actually in the process of pausing. It was called the Begin Again podcast, and I'm actually rebranding it. It's going to be called Recover Stories because I started an apparel lifestyle brand called Recover, RCVR. The website is actually, I'm changing the website too right now. It's going to be We Are Recover. Right now you find it's rcvrbrand.com. But, I want to, this is my next chapter. I love having conversations, people like you. I love the idea of, of a lifestyle brand. I think the world can use more of them. Some of the people in AA, some of the old timers would think even doing a podcast is like a big no-no. And I just don't agree with that. I just, and again, I love AA, and everyone does things their own way. Like I have a friend, he's 30 something years sober, and the guy sitting next to him for 30 years doesn't know that he's in AA, that he doesn't drink. It's like kind of funny to me. I don't know. I'm just more open, and I think it's helped me, so that Recover Out Loud sort of movement really touched me. And so, this is going to be my next career chapter. I'm just in the building phase right now. It's been great. I'm learning a lot. It's been only around for 6 months, I think now, technically. Okay. But there's a lot coming in 2026.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's where I started, was listening to podcasts like Annie Grace, This Naked Mind.
Yeah.
And I think it just made you feel like you're not alone, like you're normal. This is like you said, the whole stigma. So it really helped. And then the huge community on Instagram. That's great.
Yes. So that's what I mean. And I say this a lot too. And I haven't been on a podcast in a while, as I've taken a little step back these past few months because of Build to Recover and rebranding the podcast and what have you. But I don't, I don't care how you get here, right? Like there's a lot of different ways to get here. And there's more blossoming, right? Like sober curious. Like I didn't know what sober curious even meant, And a perfect example is when I heard sober curious, I was like, oh, all right, that sounds cool, but that's over there. That's like not my lane. And
sure,
it dawned on me like right away though, like actually they might be the most important people in the room because if they can realize that they don't have to keep drinking and they can not have those however many years of chaos and whatever that drinking, bad drinking does to us, man, they are winning. So I think they're so super important. So now there's so many coaches, there's Instagram. I know how tons of people that have gotten sober just from Instagram or just from Facebook. And so I don't care how you get. If someone's going to ask me, like, Gary, how did you get sober? I'm going to tell them my story, and it's AA, and I'm still active in AA, and I will continue to be. It saved my life. There's a great men's meeting right down the road that I go to every Tuesday night. Here's another funny thing about. I think you touched upon like, where were you 20 years ago type of thing, and where are you today? Like I am in. It started during COVID. My sponsor and group's like, hey, we got to do something. Like, let's jump on a Zoom call, 6:00 Monday, and let's just like read the big book. Like, all right, cool. And there's like, 10 of us or eight or 10 of us. And that was 2019. And let me tell you, like, that's turned into a men's book club on Monday nights at 6:00 and it's like our lifeline. Like we can't miss it. It's so important to us.
Yeah.
And I laugh because, if someone told me, Jennifer, 20 years ago, like, hey, you're going to be in a book club with, 8 other dudes and you're going to love it. And it's going to be based on sobriety. I'd be like, well, what happened to me? Oh my God, that's terrible. But
Yeah.
but it's not. It's amazing. I've been given this kind of gift of an open mind that I didn't have prior to this. Because one thing I've learned is I don't know anything. And I think that's helped me in a way, like to have an open mind and say I don't know everything. Just there's other ways to do everything, right? So keep an open mind and always keep learning.
Yeah, no, that's great. So you are rebranding, and people can find you on your website. And where
Yes.
are you on Instagram? Because I think I follow
So
you on
Instagram, yeah. So I'm actually going to be moving, but my Instagram handle is the Begin Again podcast at the Begin Again podcast. But I'm really going to be moving everything over to one channel, which is We Are Recover, WEARERCVR. That's the channel I'm really going to be focusing on. I'll still be touching the Begin Again podcast for a while, but it's all going to be driven under one, and that's going to go across all my socials. We Are Recover. Yeah, so I'm very active there. I love the DMs. There's nothing better than having a podcast or a guest on, and hey, I heard you, and you helped me today. I went through this. That's the thing about sharing our stories, right? That's why even when you're in a meeting, it's important to raise your hand. Now we get to do this, online, and something I may say or something Jennifer may say could hit somebody else, and it could help them, right? And so what you're doing, what we're doing, like I think we all just want to amplify all of this, like as much as we possibly can. And I want to eliminate the stigma. You are not alone is just really the full gist of everything that I'm trying to build. You're not alone. An incredible life awaits you on the other side of your addiction, of your alcoholism. I love this. What's the saying? We're a group of millions of comebacks. And who doesn't love a comeback story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. So you're not doing coaching or anything?
No, I never had any interest in
Okay.
just because I've been asked, like, you'd be such a good whatever. I don't know. I've been asked, and the answer is no. It's not my lane. It's not for me. There's plenty other.
Yeah.
I just it's not for me. It's gone from strictly AA related. It's pretty much a self-help group right now, like the books that we're reading, and they're incredible books. They're all based around the same thing. We're all fear-based stuff, all self-help. That I think there's always the mind games, right? And how we talk. And here's another thing which I love is there's so many of us in recovery or in our addictions or in our alcoholism that we're professionals at beating ourselves up. Absolutely, that's like across the board. And I heard a buddy of mine say, and he said it just off the cuff, he said, no one speaks to me nearly anywhere close to as badly as I speak to myself. I think that's got to stop too. Like I really, really do. I had a woman on my podcast, this is on the same token here, and she said, I keep a picture of myself, of my younger self, 5 or 6-year-old younger girl, close by. So every time she's like down the rabbit hole, she looks at that picture and says, what kid, you're doing great. And I've taken that, like, even though I don't have a little picture of me, but I have the proverbial picture. Yeah. I said, when I'm beating myself up, and say, what, Gary, you're doing great today, man.
Yeah.
Go easy on yourself. We all need to go a little easier on each other, for sure, the way the world is today. We need to go easier on ourselves, too, right? Be kind, and be kind to ourselves.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I love that story that she has a picture of herself as a little girl.
Yeah, me too.
I've heard that. Like, you would never talk to somebody else the way you talk about yourself. So, yeah, that's...
Right? It's so true. Yeah, it is. That should be... We should be aware of that. We should be more aware of that.
If today's episode hit home, you're not alone and you're not broken. You're waking up. If you're ready for more honesty, more clarity, and more real talk, make sure to follow, share, or leave a review. And if no one told you today, you're powerful AF. Catch you next time on Alcohol-Free Superpowers.